Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents One of Our Spaceships is Missing by Chris Gerrib. Narrated by Curtis Michael Holland. Chapter 1. ValuTrip Cardinal. Victoria. Victoria settled behind the piano in what most passengers misnamed as the first-class lounge of the in-system spaceship ValuTrip Cardinal. The lounge was open to everyone, although only first-class passengers got their first drink of the night free from the bar. Given how much more the first-class passengers were paying for the same food, and only marginally larger cabins, that free drink came very dearly indeed. She stretched her fingers. "Hi there, good-looking." "Hi there yourself," Victoria replied, glancing up from her music display. "Well, Hank," Victoria said, putting her hands on her hips, "I like that dress." The dress in question was a spaghetti strap number made of two pieces of material, black and white, connected by white lacing. The lacing started at the top of Hank's cleavage and ran diagonally down her chest, becoming a side slit at her right hip. It was an interesting way to tastefully expose a lot of olive-colored skin. "I'm glad you like it," Hank replied. "I had to send down for my stored bag to get it." "It was worth it," Victoria said. "I hope you tipped the guy who had to go get your bag for you," she mentally added, then wondered why she cared. It's not like that SOB will be able to spend any money after tonight. "So what are you doing after your set?" Hank asked. "You, hopefully," Victoria replied. She smiled. It was the line she'd used every night since they'd hooked up. "If you can catch me," Hank said. "Yeah, not like you ran from me very fast." Victoria felt her face flush and looked away. The woman was very talented in bed. "Be a dear, Hank," Victoria said. "A glass of wine for a working stiff?" Hank set her glass of beer down on the small bar, which wrapped around the piano, an act that highlighted the cast on her right wrist. "Coming right up. Wouldn't want you to get dehydrated." Victoria unabashedly admired Hank's ass as the woman sashayed to the bar. "Not what you think of when you think Navy," she whispered to herself. Commander Henrietta Hank Solis, United States Navy, retired, at age 45, had treated herself to a long tourist visit to Mars, and was now returning home to take a job with the VA, whatever that was. Victoria had hooked up with her on the first night out, and now, 5 days later, they had a regular thing. "Pity you're never going to see Earth again," she chuckled. "I'm getting soft in my old age." Victoria adjusted her microphone and noticed her boss, Jack Otarski, buttering up one of the passengers. He frowned on crew members having relationships with passengers. He frowned a lot, as crew members hooked up on the regular. Hank returned, her dress emphasizing her lack of a bra. "She was out of Pinot Noir, so I got a red Zin." "That works," Victoria said. Helen, the bartender, probably had plenty of Pinot. Switching to Zin was a signal that something was not going to plan, which was just wonderful. "I've spent 2 fucking years working on this plan, and I'll be damned if this doesn't go off." Victoria was especially pissed, given the event was supposed to have happened last night. They were already 24 hours behind schedule. She noticed her boss checking his old-fashioned wristwatch, so she launched into her first song, a mid-tempo ballad which had been a respectable hit 20 years ago. No point in getting him wound up until after we've pulled off tonight's activities. The audience was of an age to remember the song, and the opening bars produced smiles. It is nice to be appreciated. Fortunately, thanks to some long-forgotten union functionary at the International Spacefarers Union, solo performers were guaranteed a 10-minute break every hour. Her boss, Otarski, would have her on a clock, but she'd get her 10 minutes. At her first break, ostensibly to powder her nose, but really to find out what tonight's fucking hiccup was, Victoria went toward the toilets at one corner of the lounge. They were tastefully hidden from the rest of the lounge by a metal and glass divider. Also hidden behind the divider was a fiberglass door with fake wood grain, discreetly labeled "Crew Only." She used her access band to open the door and stepped into a hallway. Unlike the passenger lounge with nice but generic wallpaper and wood-grained fiberglass trim, the hallway was painted metal with harsh industrial lighting. Bruno was waiting for her in the hallway, his green hair clashing with his pale skin and the red overalls of the ship's repair department. His hair wasn't a dye job. His grandmother had her hair gen-modded, and he'd inherited the coloring from her. "What's the malfunction now?" Victoria asked. "Good evening to you too, Your Highness." "Your Grace. I'm a Grand Duke, not a Royal. My oldest sister got that title." "Whatever, Vicky." "Point, please. Get to it." "Don't have the keys." Victoria bit back a curse. Bruno was an odd duck, especially for a crook, and surprisingly offended by profanity. Given that he looked big enough to wrestle elephants and that she needed him, offending him now was not an option. "Why not?" "Thomas missed the lift." "You told me Thomas was a super-duper pickpocket." "He is. He missed." "Well, tell him to try again. And don't miss." "If he does?" She glared at Bruno. "Then you need to go sit on Davidoff. This does not, I repeat, does not work without those keys." The keys in question were physical pieces of metal, needed because they allowed one to bypass the regular electronic security elements. On a spaceship, there were places that needed to be accessible no matter what. Her people needed to get to more than one of those places. "I'm on it." "Thank you." Victoria tapped Bruno on the arm, avoiding wincing at his greasy coverall. "If you end up having to get forceful with Davidoff, keep it quiet and try to keep her alive. We may need her." "Those two things may be in conflict with each other." "The highest priority is quiet. Alive is nice, but secondary." She gestured down the hall. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I do, in fact, need to take a leak before my next set." Bruno gestured toward the unisex single-occupancy toilet down the hall. "By my leave, Your Grace." "No, it's by my leave, you dolt." She nodded and stepped around him. Once ensconced in the toilet, Victoria indulged herself by whispering, "I am surrounded by fucking incompetent asswipes who can't pour shitty water out of a boot with instructions on the goddamned heel." She shuddered. Which cocksucker of a god did I offend to deserve this? On finishing her business, Victoria took a minute to look at herself in the mirror, under the glare of the industrial lights in the toilet, which was tiny enough that she could have washed her hands while on the throne. Throne. Fitting. Victoria was listed on the ship's books as Stevens. It was actually her legal name, taken from her husband before she'd taken his life. Her real name was Hacken, and her older sister was, after the untimely death of their parents, Queen of Ganymede and Red Queen of Luna. The United Nations of Earth, back when that was a thing, had kicked them off of Luna, and the Martians, those stick-up-their-ass do-gooders, had kicked them off of Ganymede. The Martians, who controlled access out of the solar system at the time, had also flat out blocked them from leaving. The family had ended up on Mercury, rich in dignity but merely well off in money. Under the freewheeling syndication of Mercury, the Hackens could call themselves whatever they wanted and run their domes with a free hand, as long as the uranium flowed. Her great-grandfather and grandfather had both been much more interested in politics and the proper conduct of aristocracy than in mining. Uranium had not flowed, while money had, including the money to get Victoria a Master of Music History degree from the Royal Welsh College of Music and Drama. Victoria reached into the pocket of her dress and produced a tube of lipstick. She uncapped the lipstick and started to touch up her lips. Her parents, desperate for money, had concocted a plan to marry her and her sisters off to rich off-worlders looking for a title. Then they died in that unfortunate shuttle crash. Now the family's fortunes rested on the success of this plan. There was a long list of people on Mercury who would gladly divide up the family properties if this mission didn't pay out. I can't let them down. I won't let them down. She capped her lipstick. Let's go do this. Kelly. Kelly Rack stood at the door to the first-class lounge, leading 3 fellow Martians. She rotated her head, trying to relieve the soreness in her neck. The ship ran on 1G, which was useful since that was what the gravity was like on Earth, but that was 3 times what she was used to. It was amazing how heavy stuff was, like your head. They were all exchange students, heading from Mars to Earth, and besides the unpleasant encounter with gravity, they had been having unpleasant encounters with American liquor laws. Specifically, they had discovered that in America, one had to be 21 Earth years old to buy booze. Since a Martian year, a mere, was 1.8 Earth years long, that meant one had to be 11 2/3 years old. Kelly, the youngest of the group, was 9.5 years old, and given her lack of stature, looked younger. You sure she's going to sell to us? Kelly looked at the boy. Spider, they called him. He was from Franklin City South High School, while Kelly had attended City North. They'd seen each other at the orientation for outbounds, but not really hung out. Even on this tin can, they'd not been around each other much. This expedition, however, had been Pete Gleese's idea. Pete of the cute ass. Stop that. You have a girlfriend. Kelly glanced at the bar and away from Pete. Well, I think I have a girlfriend. Leah had been very vocal in her disapproval of Kelly going to Earth for a half-mere. We doing this or not? Spider asked. I am, said their fourth, Zola, a cute brunette with dreads. Not that it's going to work. You're sure she's a Martian? Kelly said, pointing out the bartender. Spider nodded. So? Zola said. Works for the USians. We won't know until we try, Kelly said. Why'd you come if you didn't think this would work? Attack, troopers! Attack! Kelly felt like a mama duck being trailed by her baby ducks as they walked to the bar. She noticed a woman with warm, amber-colored skin playing the piano. Hot, but just at the ragged edge of too old for her. An olive-skinned woman, definitely too old but still very attractive, was in a two-tone dress at the piano bar, giving the singer the lust eyes. I guess the hottie's got her a benefriend. Shame I'm taken. Either one of them looks like they could be fun. She glanced over her shoulder. So could Pete. Damn, maybe I should drop Leah. There were only 2 free seats at the bar, and Kelly, having designated herself as leader, grabbed one of them. Spider, surprisingly forthright for such a mousy fellow, grabbed the other. "What can I do for you?" the bartender asked in her heavy Olympian accent. "I'll try the ship's red," Kelly said. "You've been watching too many old videos," the bartender said with a smile. "You don't have grow rooms on this tin can?" Spider asked. "We got 'em," the bartender allowed. "Been a long time since anybody used them to grow grapes for wine. If you're in for a red, I got a special on the Cabernet." "That works," Kelly said. She gestured behind her. "For the group." The bartender winked. "Coming right up." Chapter 2. ValuTrip Cardinal. Victoria. Victoria finished her song to a smattering of applause. She glanced over at the group of Martian exchange students who apparently thought they were pulling a fast one on Helen. That cocksucker. I told Frank Mallon no kids on this boat. She queued up another song, one which had just charted on Mars, in honor of her underaged guests. Oh well, can't do anything about it now. Hank had wanted to go dancing, so after her final set, Victoria had taken her girl by the hand and gone to the dance bar. The Martian kids she'd seen at her bar were there as well, having been discreetly run out by her boss. Almost immediately after they arrived, Hank allowed herself to be dragged out on the floor by a dreadlocked Martian girl. The girl, clearly a bit tipsy, was trying and mostly succeeding to teach Hank the moves to the hot new Martian dance. Let them have their moment of fun. It will be the last for a long time. The hell of it was that the new dance was actually a revival of a dance craze from the first decade of the 21st century, as were the lowrider jeans all the kids were wearing. The DJ got tired of catering to the young and put on an older song, quite possibly one which the kids were conceived to. Hank, a pleasant sheen of sweat on her brow, came back to the table. "You ready to go?" "I thought you wanted to dance," Victoria said. "I did," she winked. "Now let's dance under the covers." Victoria appreciated that the American Navy was as direct as other navies when it came to sex. She looked past Hank to see Ted Beale waving at her from across the room. Guy was as subtle as a moose in heat. "You go on. I gotta say hi to one of my fans." "Don't be long," Hank said, faking a pout. "I won't." As Hank left, Victoria crossed the dance floor and settled onto a low, rounded stool at Ted's table. "Talk to me," she said. "We have keys," Ted replied. "About fucking time," Victoria replied. "Exactly what Bruno said. I didn't think he would say shit if he had a mouth full of it." "He will," Ted said. "He just doesn't like ladies to cuss." Ted ran a finger down her bare arm. "Or show off too much skin." "What the actual fuck?" Victoria said, jerking her arm away. "Hey," Ted said, hand held up defensively. "I'm merely reporting." He shrugged. "Guys from some nutso-religious sect or group or whatever." Yet he's willing to do this. "I think as far as he's concerned, we're all heathens, and whatever happens to us is God's punishment for heathenness." Victoria was not sure heathenness was a word, but decided not to argue the point. "Where are we on the timeline?" "Everything is moved back 1 hour." Ted pointed his chin at the door. "So you probably got time to bang that hot piece of ass." "Then I shall." She managed to get the best stateroom on the ship, Victoria thought, lounging on that stateroom's bed, with a satisfied grin on her face. "After tonight, I shall have to move in." Crew quarters on the Cardinal were Spartan and tight, and everybody had a roommate assigned by the company. Only a couple of the senior officers had singles, and those also doubled as their offices. Hank's stateroom, on the other hand, was large, as spaceship cabins went, having room for a built-in couch and a chair and a little sitting area which was separate from the wood-grained fiberglass desk. Beside her, Hank stirred in her sleep, causing the sheet to slide off her very firm ass. Maybe I should just keep her. Victoria's access band beeped quietly. She silenced it and slid out of the bed. She picked up her dress from the heap of clothing on the floor and pulled it on, then went looking for her shoes. The room was dim, lit with just a nightlight, so it took a minute to find her black shoes on the dark gray carpet. It hadn't helped that they had both been in a hurry to get their clothing off when they hit the door. Shoes on, Victoria opened the door to find Ted Beale standing there. "This isn't your cabin," Victoria said in a low voice. The time was quickly coming to go loud, but it had not arrived yet. "Problem," Ted said. "Step back," Victoria said. She stepped out into the passageway and eased the door closed behind her. "And keep your voice down. Now what?" "Zoran's a bust." "Who's Zoran?" Hank said. Victoria turned around to see Hank peeking around the door and apparently using it to shield her nakedness. "Long story," Victoria said. "What does she know?" Ted asked, the stress obvious in his voice. "I didn't mean to wake you," Victoria said to Hank, wishing Ted would shut the fuck up. "On the ship I kept getting woken up in the middle of the night for reports," she replied. "Became a light sleeper." She looked at Ted. "Isn't your cabin on the other end of the corridor?" "He was just going there," Victoria said. She looked sternly at Ted. "Weren't you?" He really wasn't. It was more like he'd grown roots. He was also pale, and a thin sheen of sweat had popped on his upper lip. It is so hard to find good fucking help. "He doesn't look so good," Hank said. "Maybe I should call somebody?" "No," Ted said entirely too forcefully. Victoria turned to fully face Hank. "Thanks, dear, but I got this." "Got what? Let me call—" Victoria pushed the door as hard as she could at Hank, knocking the other woman back into the cabin. She followed that up by barreling into the cabin and throwing a left jab at Hank's nose. It landed solidly, and Hank's head bounced against the wall to the cabin's bathroom. Hank fell back into the main part of the cabin with Victoria on her heels. Hank was clearly surprised, but swung a haymaker at Victoria, catching her on her right side. Victoria replied with another jab and an undercut, catching Hank in the stomach, doubling her up. She put Hank in a chokehold. "Stop fighting or it's lights out," she growled into Hank's ear. The other woman tried to flip Victoria over, but Victoria tripped her, and they landed on the bed with Victoria on top of Hank. "Have it your way," Victoria said, and choked the woman into unconsciousness. Once Hank stopped moving, Victoria rolled off the bed. Ted had at least had the sense to step into the cabin and close the door behind him. "The other cabins will call security," he said. "If they didn't hear us earlier," Victoria said. "They won't now." She pushed a strand of hair out of her eyes. "Got some tape?" "No." "Of course not. Why would you have something of use?" "I think she had a roll in the bathroom." Kelly. Kelly stood at the door to her cabin with Pete, he of the superb ass, next to her. Too close, really. His smell was heady and slightly intoxicating. Or is that the booze talking? "If you got a roommate, we could go to my cabin," Pete said. "Ship had a last-minute cancellation and I'm a solo." He held up a hand. "Just to hang out." "Well, that's not wasting any time," she sighed. "Hanging out alone might lead me to doing something I regret. Actually, I was solo too. Apparently more than one person had bailed on the idea of going to Earth. But no, that's okay, Kelly said. She forced herself to take a step back, the weakness in her knees not entirely due to the ship's higher gravity. I've got a girlfriend back on Mars. Well, I think I do. She's millions of kilometers away. He made a show of looking at the time readout on his access band. Oh, just got a couple dozen kilometers farther while we talked. Just because she's not here doesn't make it okay. What she doesn't know won't hurt her. Now that was an old line. Not true. Come on. You're killing me here. Kelly smiled. As my drill sergeant said, you'll figure something out to entertain yourself. Good night. Wow, Pete said, miming being slapped. Nice brush back. Sorry, Kelly said, sticking her tongue out at him. Pete looked bashful, which made him even cuter. Can't blame a guy for trying. She thumped him on the chest, trying to look angry. There's trying, and there's hitting them on the head with a club and dragging them back to the cave. Sorry, Pete said, still bashful and cute. Kelly stood on her tiptoes and planted a quick kiss on his cheek. Stop looking like a damn sad puppy dog, or I'll forget myself. That's part of my master plan, Pete said, chuckling and smiling. Yeah, you meant to do that, Kelly replied. Good night, she said into his chest as she hugged him. Sleep well, little bit, he replied. She gave him a playful poke. Enough with the short jokes. Sorry, he said with a wicked smile. Breakfast tomorrow? He asked hopefully. If you can dodge Mrs. Hacker, Kelly said, referring to their Earth-based chaperone. Their days were spent in the ship's conference rooms, attending orientation for their arrival on Earth. Kelly stepped inside and shut her cabin door, then leaned against it. The cabin steward had tied a towel in the shape of a monkey, and it was swinging from a hanger in the middle of her tiny room. Want a party, Miss Monkey? She said. She giggled and tossed the towel monkey toward the tiny green built-in couch. The inhabited area of the ship was spun to create gravity, and as a result, the flight path had a noticeable curve to it. If my curveball had been that good on Mars, I'd have made the varsity team, she said. She undressed for bed, noting that pretty much everything hurt. She'd been told the pain would go away once her body adjusted, but so far that hadn't happened. At least the engines had stopped. When they were running, the thrust made it seem like you were standing on a sloping hill. Kelly jerked out of bed, sending her pillow flying. A loud, pulsating alarm was sounding, "Awooga!" and a strobe light was flashing in her room. The alarm stopped, and a woman's voice came over the public address system. Bravo, 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 bravo. Please proceed immediately to your emergency stations. Bravo, 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 bravo. Please proceed immediately to your emergency stations. The voice was way too calm for the horn that preceded, then followed it. Artificial or pre-recorded, Kelly decided. She glanced at the clock in her room. 3:20 a.m.? God help them if this is a drill. She rolled out of bed, her heart pounding, and trotted to the bathroom for a quick pee, then scrambled into last night's clothes. She opened the door to see one of the cabin stewards pounding on the doors. This is no drill, the woman said in her unfamiliar but presumably earthling accent. The deck curved up away from Kelly, and so made the woman appear to be uphill. What's a bravo? Kelly asked. Fire! The woman replied. Kelly felt a lump in her stomach. I'll get this side, Kelly said, pointing over her shoulder with her thumb. We need to get them out now. Smoke can kill quick. She moved down the corridor, pounding on the half-dozen cabin doors between her and the staircase to the ship's...
Sample complete. Ready to continue?